Hey guys, Sheephead here again with another video from Final Fantasy XIV. In today's video we're going to be talking about the level 50 instance Amdapor Keep. I'm going to be walking you through it, I'm going to be explaining every single boss here, and exactly how you should be speedrunning this instance. So let's do it. Now if you're stuck on a particular boss, you can click the annotations at the top of the screen, and you can go directly to it. Now before we get into the instance itself with the boss tactics, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about Amdapor Keep itself, why it's so important, why you're going to be running this so much, and how to speedrun it. So, in answer to the first question, why is this instance so important and why are you going to want to run it a lot? This instance is the fastest level 50 instance that you can do once you learn how to speedrun it, and it's the place that you want to farm the most for loot. Now, this is for two reasons. As you can see here, the instance drops a level 60 item level green gear, so you're going to want to be farming this, but also, every time you kill a boss, it drops one of two tokens. When you kill the first boss, you're going to get 10 tokens of philosophy. Second boss is going to give you 20 tokens of philosophy. The third boss, and the final boss, is going to give you 50 tokens of philosophy, but it's also going to give you 40 tokens of mythology. Now, as you guys can see on screen, I am in Revenant's Toll, which is a level 50 zone. You know how to get there if you're level 50. And there's an NPC here where you can trade in these tokens to get very high level gear. By trading in your tokens of philosophy, you can get item level 70 gear, and by trading in your tokens of mythology, you can get item level 90 gear. Now, the first tokens you can farm as much as you want, and you can spend as much gear as you want per week. However, the second tokens, the tokens of mythology, you can only get 300 a week. So it's for this reason that you want to farm this instance 8 times a week to cap out that, so you can get the maximum amount of gear per week. Now I'm going to be putting out a video on all this good stuff, just to explain the gear progression once you ding 50, so make sure that you check out for that. But for now, we're going to get into the instance, so let's do it. So, what is all this speedrunning that I've been talking about? Basically, if you were to do the instance from start to finish with all the trash, it would take you, without wiping, probably 45 to 60 minutes. However, if you speedrun, i.e. skip all the trash, you can do it in about 15 minutes. So as you guys can see on screen, the tank is pretty much just going to run from the start of the instance to the first boss. He's going to run past all the mobs and he's going to tag them. In the meantime, me and the rest of the group members, we're going to put away our pets, we're going to not do any heals, and we're not going to do any attacks whatsoever. We're just going to run about 10 yards behind him all the way to the first boss. When we get to the boss room, the tank is going to split off to the left with all the mobs, and the rest of the group we're going to run to the right. Now the way that this works is that the tank is going to have 100% threat on all the mobs. He's going to run to the left and he's going to die. When he dies, the mobs don't know what to do because there's no one technically on the threat table, and they're just going to reset, leaving us to be fine on the right side of the room. Once the mobs have reset, just get your healer to res up the tank and you're good to go for the first boss. Upon entering the room, you're going to notice that there's a big circle with a couple of pillars around the outside, and there's a lunatic priest in the middle. Now this is going to be the first phase of the boss, and all you have to do is simply nuke down the guy in the middle. As far as spells go, he doesn't really do too much. He's going to throw down some AoE red circles, you simply just move out of them and you nuke him down. Now when he gets to about 50%, you're going to notice that a second dude spawns, so I'm going to call this guy the psychic guy. And this is actually the main boss, so when you kill this guy, that's the end of the fight. When this guy joins the fight, you're going to notice that he does two things. Number one is that he's going to cast an AoE called Thunder. It does absolutely no damage. Well, that's a lie. It does a little bit of damage, but you're not going to notice it. And number two is that he's going to do this pink beam across the room. When he does this, he's going to spawn a stone ad, which does a hell of a lot of damage and has a spell called Obliterate. So what you want to do in this instance is you want to either let your tank pick it up as soon as possible to keep it away from the healer, because if it hits the healer, it's pretty much going to two-shot them. Or you just want to get your DPS to nuke it down as soon as possible. If you do see it cast an Obliterate and you have an ability which you can interrupt or silence the mob, then make sure you do it to avoid mass damage. The rock mob also has one other spell, which is like a forward line AoE spell. It's simply you can interrupt it or you can just move out of it, but it gets a little bit harder later on, so you definitely want to nuke these down as soon as possible. So after you've dealt with 3 of the rock golems, you're going to notice that the boss targets a massive pile of rubble at the back of the room. Now when he does this, this is phase 2 of the fight, and he's going to spawn up a huge golem that is going to do so much AoE damage, and it'll one-shot anyone who gets hit by its ability. When this mob spawns, you don't need to tank it or anything like that, it's just on its own set of rails, and it's pretty much going to patrol between one of two positions. The center of the room, and then slightly closer to where the entrance of the room is. Once it's moved into place, it's going to stand there and do this massive red circle that you just need to move out of, or you can line of sight it with the pillars. If you do get hit by it, however, it's a one shot and you're dead. So I've done this instance probably 10 times, and there's 2 different ways I see tanks do this. The first way is that when they start spawning the rock golems, they can move the boss. They move him to the very top left of the room, as you can see here. It's for this reason that the AoE circle in both locations cannot physically hit you if you hug the wall. It's just not big enough. The downside to this strategy is that you have to be very close to the wall, and as you can see here, my camera angle just messes up. And I can barely see the new rock golems that are spawning, as I do need to nuke them down and interrupt them. The other tactic is to take the boss to the right side of the room, and just to slightly reposition the boss in between the first and the second AoE. You can dodge the first AoE by just standing to the right of the room. However, when he moves forward for the second one, you need to get your tank to move him slightly north, so you can position yourself 1, out of the red circle, or 2, out of line of sight via the use of the pillars. As far as the rest of the fight goes, you just need to get those adds, nuke them down as soon as possible, and just nuke down the boss. When it comes to limit break, personally, if you've done the speedrun strategy, you need to save this limit break from the first boss so you can use it on the second boss. However, if you're not doing the speedrun, you're not going to skip the next trash as well, then you can simply just use the limit break whenever you want. Now, as I said, you can also skip the trash on the way to the second boss, so I thought I'd show you a video of just it sped up, just so you understand what to do. I'd like to note that if your tank has good enough gear, there is a chest on the right hand side of the first room which drops a ring, so you can go grab that. If you don't have good enough gear, you can clear the first room, get the chest, and then continue on from there. Now, moving on to the second boss in the instance, this is called the Demon Wall. It's probably the most fun boss in here, I really enjoy it. However, it seems to cause a little bit of trouble with some people who've never done it before, so therefore we'll call it the hardest boss as well. So this boss has 3 main abilities. The first one you can see here on screen is these void zones. Now they're going to spawn in a specific pattern, and pretty much you're just going to want to make sure that you're never in these void zones. They're only going to be there for a couple of seconds at a time, and once that one disappears, you can move directly into the safe zone of the next one. So as you can see, the first one is going to spawn in the center, thus the safe zone is either the left or the right. Once that one disappears, you're going to want to move into the center, because the left one and the right side are going to turn into void zones. This just repeats 2 times over, so it goes center, sides, center, sides. Once this has happened, you're going to want to move back into the center and go as close to the boss as possible, because he's going to cast an ability called Repel. When he does this and the cast finishes, he's going to knock you back. Now, if you're in the center of the room, he's just going to knock you backwards. However, if you're at the sides, where you shouldn't be, he's going to push you off the edge, you're going to fall to your death, and it's going to be game over. So after the first repel, you're going to notice that the boss actually moves up physically as a wall, and he pushes you back into a void zone. You just move forward, get to the left side, the safe zone, and continue doing what you were doing. After the second repel, you're going to notice that 2 bees spawn up. They're called blood lappers, one on the left and one on the right. So these bees, they don't really do much. They just do a lot of damage if they hit your healer. So the first point of call is for the tank to grab one of them or 2 of them. The reason I say one of them is that every instance that I go into, we have a strat where we're going to nuke down the left one first with the limit break that we saved from last boss. So any damage dealing limit breakers, just target the left bee, nuke it down with a limit break, and then the other DPS finish it off. The tank is going to grab the one on the right, and he's going to get a threat away from the healer. As soon as you finish the left one, you just switch to the right one. Now, if you take too long to kill these, one of 2 things is going to happen. One is that they cast an AoE red circle, which takes up like 50% of the platform. Thus, if there's 2 of them, you got nowhere really to stand, as there's void zones up as well, so it makes it kind of hard. And number 2, if your DPS is really slow, then he's going to do another repel, and it's just going to be a massive shitfest. So make sure that you nuke him down as soon as possible. And if you use your limit break on a previous attempt and you did wipe, then sadly you're going to have to clear the trash on the way to this boss. Either that or have pro enough DPS to nuke him down as soon as possible. Other than that, it is kind of a small DPS race. You just need to make sure that you get it down before you get too pushed against the wall / squashed. But yeah, it's a relatively fun and simple fight. So let's move on to the third and final boss. As I said again, here's the speed run running between the second and the third boss. This is the hardest one, mainly because there's a lot longer to run, there's more mobs, and some of them do AoE. So what I like to say is that if you can't do it on first attempt, clear the first 2 or 3 packs, and then run from there. Obviously, the more gear you get, the more gear the tank gets, the easier this will become, the longer they can survive, the longer they can run. If you're lucky enough to have a bard in your group, then they can obviously use Swift Song, which will give you a passive run speed increase, and also you can use your sprints as well. Okay, so moving on to the third and the final boss of the instance, which is called Amdapor. I believe that's how you pronounce it, this big spider dude. This boss is relatively simple. It has 4 different abilities, so I'm going to go over those now. The first ability is a massive tail swipe that he does all the time throughout the fight. And I believe it one-shots if you get hit by it. So any melee that are in the fight, you obviously don't really want to attack from behind him. The second ability that the boss casts is called Imminent Catastrophe. And it's pretty long cast time, it cannot be interrupted. When he does this, you're going to notice that a huge orb spawns in the center of the room. Once this orb is spawned, you're going to notice that it falls towards the ground. When it hits the ground, it's going to kill anyone in the room who has not blocked it via line of sight. So as you can see here, we've noticed that the orb is spawned up. And we're going to move to one of the 4 pillars around the room. We're going to line of sight the center of the room, and we're going to survive. If you miss this, you're dead. It's for this reason, and this reason alone, that you see many tanks tank with their back against the wall in the top right of the room. They can stand here very easily, and they can move directly to the closest pillar without having to move the boss so far. Once this cast is finished, the orbs hit the floor. You're going to notice that one of the pillars is going to disappear. Now this happens in a specific order. The first pillar to disappear is going to be the top left one, then the bottom right, then the bottom left, and then the top right. When these pillars despawn, an ad is going to spawn, as you guys can see on screen. It's called a Dark Helot, and you pretty much just want to kill it as soon as possible. It's going to be too far away for the tank to deal with it, so it's up to the DPS to just pick it up, get it away from the healer, and nuke it down. Now, as you guys can see, during this fight, from about 70%, the boss actually gains another ability, which is this purple line that we've seen from the first boss. When he does this on you or another player, that player needs to run away from everyone else in the room. About 5 seconds after, you're going to notice that you get a small red circle around your feet, and you're going to drop a bomb. This bomb is going to stay there for about 30 seconds to a minute, and it's going to do AoE every 2 or 3 seconds, and it does about 900 damage. So basically the aim for these is that you get as far away from the group and the pillars as possible. The reason you want to get away from the pillars is that if you drop the bomb next to the pillars, and you have to go line of sight behind the pillar, you're going to die. One other thing that I'd like to say is that you need to ideally not die to the tail swipe when you do this. So running to the top left of the room is probably stupid because the tail swipe takes up that whole percentage of the room. So ideally, bottom right and bottom left are the best places to drop these. So other than that, you just nuke the boss down to 0%. You can use the damage limit break 2 to do anything. Normally kill off one of the ads, which helps, and just focus the boss. So this is the end of the Amdapor video guide. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, then please put them in the comment section below, and I will be guaranteed to answer your question or reply to your comment, because that's what I do. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the content that I have here on Final Fantasy XIV. In the next couple of days, I'm going to be uploading video guides for every 50 instance, which includes the Wanderer's Palace, Ifrit hard mode, and Garuda and Titan hard mode, regarding that I get them down in the next couple of days, as I have a group in about an hour in which we're going to be doing that. Other than that, I'm going to be putting up videos on how to do your relic weapon, your legendary weapon, and also loads of other stuff, basically anything that I think of, quick tips and all this other good stuff. So if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you subscribe, and other than that guys, I will see you tomorrow. Of money that you earn from leveling from 1 to 50 on 3 different classes. So basically, I managed to get to level 32 in beta 3, and I had about 25 to 30,000 gold, and that was just blasting. So I guess, I mean, it's kind of hard to put an estimate, but I reckon at max level you probably have at least 100,000, probably more. So it's probably going to cost at least 300. I reckon it's going to cost about 300.